Hi all, welcome back. In the previous video, I showed you how to install the Active Directory Services role, and I showed you some basic configuration of that ADDS rule. Another important part of a network and a server is something called DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. This allows you to basically hand out IP addresses dynamically to each and every client that connects to your network. That makes the life of a network administrator a lot easier compared to having tables with client 1 has IP address 1, client 2 has IP address 2, etc., etc., etc. So in this video, I will show you how to install the DHCP role, which is pretty similar to the Active Directory role. And next, I will show you how to configure that role. And we'll also touch on things like the scope and what they call an exclusion range. So let's get started. So here we are, back with our virtual machine. And as you can see, I've got the server manager open again, and we go to manage, add roles and features. It's exactly the same as we did in the previous installation of Active Directory services. We click next on the welcome screen, and we chose again a role-based or feature-based installation because it's just a single server that we're going to install this on. Click next, make sure that our server is selected, and we click next. Here you can see all the roles that have already been installed, but also roles that you can install. Here you see Active Directory, which we installed in our previous video. And now we will choose DHCP. Again, the moment I select it, I will get a pop-up with features that are needed. We just accept them. We click next. No additional features need to be installed in this case. We click next. We get a little bit of information about what DHCP does. We get our confirmation screen and we click install. So now we see the configuration has been completed, and just like in the previous video, there's now two ways to do the extra configuration, either directly from this screen by clicking on complete DHCP configuration, or by closing this screen and going through the notifications window. Just click next on the description screen. And here we give the credentials that the DHCP service will run on. We will just accept the default and press commit and close. Now the DHCP service is running and active. So once the basic configuration is done, the DHCP server is active on the network, but of course it doesn't have any configuration of itself. In order to configure the DHCP settings, we go to Tools, we select DHCP, and we open our DHCP server. We see two ranges here, IPv4 and IPv6. We will choose the IPv4 scope. We right click on it and we say New Scope. And we get presented with another wizard, and we just follow that wizard. We give it a name, demo, give it something that is logical for you to understand, but also for your colleagues. Click next, and then we get the first choice we have to make. In my previous video, I explained that servers nearly always have a fixed IP address. And of course, we have to make sure that those fixed IP addresses do not interfere with the scope that we're going to configure here. We can do that in two ways. I can start this scope from a number that is beyond the servers. So for instance, I could start it at 192.168.1.11. That would reserve the first 10 addresses for me to freely use as the IP addresses for servers, printers, or any device that needs a fixed IP address. A better way to do it is by starting it as one. And for instance, I will use the whole range here. 1.254. So now I've got a whole range of 254 addresses dedicated for DHCP server. I click next. And the next option I have is to create an exclusion. And the best way to do it is to make sure that if I want to reserve IP addresses for me to hand out manually, I will do this here. Because if I need to extend that range, I can easily do it by changing the configuration. That means that everything will be taken care of automatically. So I will start an exclusion range, which would be 192.168.1.1, which would end at 192.168.1.10. Now, when I click Add, I have the first 10 addresses reserved for me to hand out manually. If at a later stage I need more addresses, all I have to do is add another exclusion range. So for instance, 11 till 25. Or I could remove this one and create a completely new one. Click Next. This is the least duration. So normally if a computer is connected to the internet, it will keep its IP addresses. Least duration is determining how long it will take before the client will request a new IP address. Default setting is 8 hours, or sorry, 8 days. Just leave it as default. Click Next. And then we get the question about extra DHCP options. Yes, we want to configure them right now. We click Next. First of all, the IP address of our router or gateway. It's basically the box at home that would normally connect to the internet. We don't have one in our lab, but if I had one, I could create a fictitious one called 254, for instance. So now my clients, when they log in, they get an IP address, they get a gateway. Next. DNS, very important part of your network, of course, is DNS. You can see that already because DNS is running on this server, it has been pre-selected. If our DNS would be a different server on the network, we would add the IP addresses here and press Add. As you can see, we can have multiple DNS servers. In this case, just accept the default and click Next. Win server, something that's not used anymore really. And the last question is, do you want to activate the scope? We select yes, click Next, and finish. So now we can see in the DHCP manager there's an activated scope. We call the demo, here it is. We double click it, we get a lot of information. We can see which computers are connected to it. We can make reservations based on MAC addresses. Scope options is not something that we'll touch on. And if I click on address pool, I can see here my complete range, and I can see the exclusion that we created from 1 to 10. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, just let me know. Like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, until next time.